So, well, it's a great honor for me and for all of us and all people looking at La Hora de las Diosas, the Goddess Hour, to meet the great Susanna Budapest. She's the mother of the goddess movement.
The global goddess movement, not just California. My vision was always global. And,
yes, absolutely.
And all my books, I introduce them to the different goddesses worshipped around the world. Americans get no education here. I mean, their mythology is like watered down Roman. And already Roman mythology is borrowed from the Greeks. And they don't know the names of the goddesses worshipped here by the Native Americans because they don't care. And the funniest thing is that they have this idea that white people are supreme, and there is not a single white person that's in the Bible, not one singular person. And there are lots of people in the Bible. Nobody's white. So a bunch of white supremacists with half-assed education think that they stand on solid ground because the Bible is not. Bible has nothing to do with white people's history, but it's weaponized.
And they say the Western people and the Bible is not from the West, it's from the East.
the best
the
thing
West.
About it. Yes. Well, I'm sitting on the very edge of the West. I mean, I can see the ocean from, if I walk a little bit.
The
I could
Pacific.
See the Pacific. The West has a very loving vibration. California, when I got here, embraced me. And I came out of New York, where I was locked up all throughout the winter because putting my feet out of the house, I would get immediately flus and colds, and then I was antibiotics, then I had to stay in bed. Just robbed me of life. It was just taken away from me, the joy of nature, because there was nothing ever to be joyous about. But in California, the beauty is overwhelming. Every season has so many good smells and so many nice songs. And before this latest horrible historical change in America happened, I caught the best decade. It was the 60s and 70s. It was wonderful here. Young people trusted each other. It was severely against the law to have even a joint in your purse. But that kind of allowed me to make friends, because if you smoked weed and you shared, then you both had the power to give each other up and send the other one to jail for a long time. And nobody done that much. That was just not, the hippies didn't give each other up to the police. And I got a lot of respect for that generation. And then I realized that I was 24 when on the Time magazine cover, the Men and Women of the Year was a generation who were under 30. So I finally had a tribe, because as an immigrant, hey, Kitty, you want to say something? Want to say something? She does. So that was a big gift from the goddess to me. I belong in Mediterranean climate, where the fruits are sweet and the flowers never stop blooming, and it's just wonderful. And this is the place where the goddess movement could grow up quite undisturbed, because all you had to know is where are places not policed at night.
Yes.
And you cannot be everywhere. This is a large state. And so I found, my dog actually found the was perfect on the edge of the land, next to the ocean in Malibu, this flat area on the top of a mountain. And she led me up there. And when I looked at it, I thought, yeah, a couple of hundred women easily could have a good time here. And I took the women up there and everybody loved it. And I had this method that we build our altar each and every time new. We cannot leave anything here. But then we toss the stones that we used into the bush. And next time when we come, we would look for it there and it'd be still there and then bring it back. But nobody else would see it. What gave us away was the 10 very good tuned Congo drums. And that's why they called the police on us. And we had history there. But let's hear your questions.
Okay. Yes, the first question is, why is necessary a feminine spirituality?
Well, much like in the general media, we are not seeing ourselves reflected. And we actually are the people who make other people. We make everybody. And for that, we pay the price in our health, in the pain that it takes to carry a big baggage for 9 months and then deliver it whole, and every part is good. And we have no, yes, we got the Blessed Virgin Mary. But Virgin Mary is a virgin. She is not a woman, you know? And while she protects women who turn to her, what we used to have is that every phase to a woman's life, there was a goddess. You cooked in your kitchen, well, there was Hertha. You gardened, there was Flora. You took your animals out, there was Artemis. So all the important parts of our lives were just spiritualized. And that also gave us a more sense of self. And we didn't lose faith so easily. And we were not depressed that much. Today, actually, it was Phyllis Chesler, Woman in Madness, who pointed out that women get mental illnesses because we don't have a goddess, that really bothers us. From deep down, that protection, and also our goddess as the moon is a goddess we can see. And as she waxes and wanes, we are connected to her. We bleed every 28 days and she blooms every 28 days. And to know that all of it, I mean, this was observed very early in human life. And numbers came from the moon, like 28 is a major number. Weather control comes from the moon. So we get rain and we get fruits and flowers. So, and actually even mathematics comes from the moon. There's so many numbers involved with the moon, the way she moves from quarter to the other, that the people knew this as a book that anybody can read. It's waning moon, now we are gathering in, now it's new moon, now we are planting the new stuff. Now it's full moon, now we celebrate the creator and ourselves as being part of. And the male religions give us nothing. They give us, first of all, they do not tamper with males. They never give them, the 10 Commandments doesn't have do not rape. There's not a word about that. The 10 Commandments, however, fluffs over Cain, the two sons of Eve. Cain kills the youngest son, Abel, and that's it. That's it. They don't, there is no punishment, there is no condemnation. And it occurs over and over again, and then it goes into warring. Because first 2 brothers, then next is 2 tribes, and next is 2 countries. So these everlasting wars, it doesn't say anything about that. So in the Holy Book, we have created our own 13 commandments, and we addressed all of these, and it's coming out soon, soonish. It was out of print for 10 years because, my books have been published by big publishers, and then when they were out of the copies and they saw that it's a steady seller, but not a blockbuster seller, then they discontinue it. And then when I saw that they do nothing for the book, I wanted it back because I can also do nothing. I don't have to give them rights to my property just because they do nothing. I can do nothing very well on my own. So it's back in my possession. And of course, it's all volunteer work, which is good in a movement. It's good to ask women to do things they don't know too much about, to learn something more about it, and discover what else did they hit from themselves. And there's a goddess for that. It's the goddess Athena, who is knowledge and curiosity and organization and lawmaking and rules for civil life. So the answer is women need the goddess because we are part of the goddess. It's like we would deny on our body an arm. We'd say, okay, this is an arm. We're not going to tell this arm that it's part of this goddess body. Mm-hmm. And that arm has to struggle, and everything that happens while the other arm is very informed, knows what's going on, and takes over. But just like a cell on our body, tiny little thing, a cell, gets hit with a mosquito bite and starts itching, that cell has a direct line to our brain, central, and says, help, do something, I'm itching, do something. And then the brain figures out what, and I go back, oh, it's itching, let's put a little cream on it, like a little poke root cream is what I use. And it gets soothed, and then that cell repairs itself. But without the goddess, we are insane. Mm. And that the first very easily seen symptom is that a woman becomes, oh, but I'm not a woman. I'm not a woman, and I'm with the man. I'm a big heterosexual. I don't hate men. Nothing to do with nothing. Women who are female identified are happier, more successful, and they're usually not a token woman. A token woman is somebody who, in a big group of males, there is one woman who they trust that she will always deny herself. And that's a token woman. That's not what I'm raising. I'm raising goddesses, consciously goddesses. And if we do it a couple of generations, we'll be fine. Yeah, that's really, I mean, there's a lot more to it than the answer that I gave you now, but ultimately, we've known this ever since Phyllis Chesler wrote Woman and Madness, that the spiritual center must be restored in a woman's mind in order to become herself fully. Mm. And then to know about the goddesses, like in the first 30 years, it's just being borning. Second destiny from 30 till 60 is the blooming, and the third, and becoming totally. And then the third one is reflecting and extracting wisdom, what was learned and seen and experienced, and passing it down to the next generation. And it's all very neat. It's really elegantly organized human life.
Yeah. And you is one of the first, or maybe the first joining feminism with spirituality. So it's very interesting because most of feminists are atheistic, and it's sometimes it's difficult to transmit about spirituality from women that suffer the patriarchy. And how do or what do you recommend to, you know, to
take a look at it? Take a look at it through the mental health point of view. Just that, the mental health. Of course, nobody pays attention to women's mental health. We are the beasts of burden. We have to carry everything, pay for everything, and then left with nothing at the end. We must change that, because to be a goddess should be fun, rewarding, and a rich life. And those people we give life to should remain close to us, and not the girls still do. But I made 2 sons, and they are successful, but elsewhere. So when I need help, but just take a look at this, Gabor. What do you think? Mom, I'm in the middle of a research. I cannot talk now. I call you later tonight, and then he does. So the oldest son is teaching pilots how to fly American airplanes that their countries bought from us. Mostly about the safety issues. And those are the 2 men I made, and they are not officially feminists, but they married feminists, both of them. And the little girl that my Laszlo is raising is already a feminist, and she's only 8. So, and he applauds it. It's just my girl. It's whatever, darling, just whatever. He's a very good daddy, and that's because I love them. I didn't say, "Oh, you man, you came out of my body, yeah, but I'm not gonna love you." It's not possible. I'm an Aquarian. I have to love. And I have Libra moon, so I have to be gentle and artistic and visionary. And yes, I have Sagittarius rising, and that's my revolutionary fire.
Wow. I am Aquarian with Sagittarius ascendant.
All right. Yeah.
But moon in Cancer.
Yeah. It's these things are done on purpose. We are bringing in a new age that already has. I thought that the Beatles laid the moral ground for the Aquarian age. That's not really here yet.
Yes.
But the sub-age of Aquarius is. And the sub-ages usually are a previews of what's coming. And the big Aquarian age comes in at 24th century. And the little sub-ages go from 175 years, and then another sub-age before we get further, and then we hit the big 2-4. I don't think I'd be here for that.
So we are, you know, in a transitional generation, or many in one of the transitional generations. So your books, for example, are planting the seeds. So it's very important to keep them.
Yes. And my mother, who was a sculptor, she created nothing but goddesses. I grew up among statues of goddesses, this goddess, that goddess. And the reason we did that, well, first of all, because Mama was inspired by that, but also because the communists really didn't allow all the themes that she could have done. But this way, she looks like a total all-out feminist artist. And she was actually, you know, just unconsciously feminist, but not, but what she did, she raised me. And here, I give you a few quotes, okay, which stuck with me. And usually she said these things when she was alone in the bathroom, and I was in the living room, and we talked across, okay? Women are the real human beings. So whatever we make is also human, but we are the ones that know how. We can create people. And that makes us people makers. And for that, we do require respect and protection from our children, because the process of taking one soul and putting it in a body, in our body, is a very fraught with dangers for both the carrier and the coming in, because, nature, there's lots of things want to kill. The other one was, oh God, I had just a few of these and I forgot the second. It may come back. but that is the gist of it. And when a woman is taking away her spirituality, what's left is a bepuzzlement and a resentfulness, because I remember when I got my period, I was only 11. And I thought it was a great injustice that I would be bleeding and the boys did not. What is that about? Also, the whole hiding, the whole thing, that was really hard on me too, because blood is not a creature who likes to be invisible. Blood wants to show. And bleeding through clothes and not able to get up from a chair because I knew I was sitting in a puddle. I mean, these are humiliations upon humiliations with the bloods. And yet that's what carries the life. Blood is the river of life. And I only learned this finally when I saw my mom just putting her bloody rags into a tub and didn't do anything about it. Just it was there, well visible to me in the bathroom. And I finally asked her, what's going on with that? It's kind of getting smelly. And she says, it's sacred blood. I wash it later. I didn't have time, but don't worry. This is good. Nothing is rotting. And she was very positive about the body.
In one of your books, you show a lot of sculptures by your mother, that they are beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Even more will be in the Holy Book again that we republish. She had a pagan temple showing in 1977. And when she asked me to come, she said, this is my coronation, you must come. And I, of course, came, even though it was very hard to afford it. I mean, from California to Budapest, it's easily $4,000 with everything, round ticket and being there, and so often I couldn't afford it, but every so often when it was important, I did come. And what was shown to me, this big hunger of farmers who used to depend on the moon for everything, and they had their own calendars, and every day had a meaning. Like on Tuesday, you are not allowed to use any needles or anything that pricks. No sewing Tuesday. It was something about the goddesses, something was torn, and then they always have a good story. But it had to do with observation, and then they dress it in a story and pass it down. When you are heated up, never drink cold water. Well, that was later I found out that's why you're not getting pneumonia. Because as children, you run and you are really, oh, water. And you find natural water, and that's always very cold. And I did that, and I got sick from it. So, but the Europeans that are no longer with us had a lot of wisdom how to live on the planet. And each of these cultures had their own pantheon, and they all had a central creatrix matrix, and they respected the mothers, and they respected the girls because they will be mothers. So the entire human line of those who bring souls into incarnation were respected for that reason. We still have the thing about, they ask for your hand in marriage. What was that about?
Don't like marriage.
The hands are creating things. The hands are creation and work. And they ask the hand, that's actually very spiritual.
Yes. And coming back to the beginning, when you were talking about the Bible, that it's not a matter of white people. It's when I told you about that is an Eastern tradition, that it was erasing the European tradition, that it was feminine. The old religion in Europe is the religion of the goddess. So
yes,
it's amazing. Yeah.
We should not, well, I see the problem when we allow the creation of an enemy. Who decides who's our enemy? They decide, and then they make a story around it to incense you, to make you angry. And then they say, okay, give us your sons. This is glorious. This is what men have to do. This has to do with manhood. Lies. These are lies. And then they steal our children and kill them. Every one of those children in any kind of military, they have to be at least, 18 years old. So 18 years of your life is just taken away, and you get back a flag if they kill him. And one of my sons was a Marine, and I was very angry while he was accompanying oil tanks next to Iraq. He never put feet on Iraq, but he was a pilot who had to accompany ships taking oil out of there. And I thought, if they kill him and give me a flag, I'm gonna make such a row. I'm gonna make a humongous show of female motherly outrage. Because look at this, what with Afghanistan? Supposedly we are out of there, but why were we there in the first place? What good did it do that we had thousands of children die there? Every one of those young men who were killed, there was a mother who was deeply sad, and all she got is a flag, which is kind of a patriarchal approach to, here's something spiritual. But no, that's just even more creating anger. And this anger then, you keep making babies because they also kept from you the secrets of birth control. Because giving birth is one good thing, but not giving birth is even better, because that shows that you can control your fecundity. The men should be told about birth control, and they should be equally educated about it. In this country, no sex education in any school. Just nothing. And the parents were already raised that way, so nobody knows nothing. The boy thinks, oh, just, this business about rape amongst the young, the very young, they do it for, now I'm a man. I put my wee-wee into her hoo-ha, and now that makes me a man. No, it won't. It just is a nasty little boy who can knock up a post-menstrual girl. And then the children would die because a very young girl cannot really deliver a child. I mean, it's just, it takes out her equipment. I was an abortion counselor, and most of our people who got procedures were very young, and a lot of them knocked up by fathers and friends of their brothers, and or just forced to. Not even any seduction involved. It was just, we beat you up if you don't lie down for us. That's a frightening picture of humanity.
Yes.
Nobody gets loved that way. And if you break little girls' hearts by abusing her fecundity, she will never love anyone, really. She may go through the motions, but the mental anguish doesn't go away. And it may or may not break out and demand satisfaction. Most of us die with a big broken heart and a big wasted life. So, yeah, that was a very interesting job I had.
Yes.
And there are herbs who can do a lot of this for us. The only reason I'm not advertising that, first of all the herbs that can cause the womb to press and expel the content of the womb, there has been no real studies on it. That is just pure folklore. And I've seen how it works on women, but I never seen how it works on pregnant women. I went to this festival for lesbians, and we were sitting on a blanket of pennyroyal. There's a crawling kind. Most pennyroyal makes a stalk, but not these. California does something always to the plants. They always do something new. And there we were sitting and listening to music. And then we go back into our tents and I just hear it. Oh no, I just had it. I just had it. Lesbians were having periods in mass quantities because we sat on pennyroyal and through the skin it went in. And now when I look around Mexican areas where Mexican women live, they always have a pennyroyal somewhere in the yard. It's not a very beautiful flower, has very mossy little yellow flowers, but they always have it. And the men use it for after dinners, big dinners, to help the stomach. So it's very useful both sexes. I wanted to advertise and talk about this because I do have a good platform. But Susan Wheat, who is the feminist herbologist and one of my daughters, said, no, Z, we don't have enough facts and we don't have enough trials. And she follows all the experiments. But in the Holy Book, I have at least 17 herbs that are abortusifiants. They are called abortusifiants or nervines, but they are specifically for the womb. And I know after I had my children, my Aunt Titi, who was a pharmacist, brought me a very potent ergot. Mm-hmm. And she said, just wet your finger a little bit and lick it, not more than that. And that would close the womb. And it did. And then when I was bleeding too long, learning how to menstruate is a real art. I mean, that can take a couple of years easily. But I couldn't stop bleeding. And then she brought that and said, okay, just a lick. And the womb, like an obedient child, closed the doors and no more bloods came out. So I know the answer is out there. I don't know why we don't organize our own. Well, it's because we don't want to really fail when there is a pregnant woman, you know? I mean, it's very different having your period again, but it has to be in the early stages. Once it's gone a little big beyond that, it's much harder, and we don't know the doses, we don't know many things about it, which is not a good thing.
Yes, and how do you manage these pandemic times? That because you celebrate a goddess festival every year, and now they are.
We just went on Zoom. It was a Zoom festival. What I have done is that I selected for presenters all the women that have already presented at the festival, and I thought they were great. And we just did it online, and then we also could talk to each other. Oh, we haven't seen each other such a long time. Oh, I hug you, you know, and but believe me, we are masked. We are not flirting with death. that's just not going to happen. Well, I started telling you about the Hungarian scientist who invented how to approach this. All the males wanted to attack and kill the bad virus. That's male technique. This lady, who is called Katinka Kariko, she says, well, first I build a protein. I get a protein from the virus itself. I open it up, and there you can tell which is the part that directs the actions of that protein. And I take that part out and make it, flip it. This must be something she does to it. And I take it and put it back, and then I close the little. It's science, but she explained how it's done. Then we make a lot of it, and when it seems to replicate itself in this change form, then we put it in arms. And then when we go and look next day or whatever, only this antivirus exists. All the viruses are gone. They ate it. So she turned the virus against itself. And that is brilliant. I hope they give her the Nobel Medical Prize, because she saved thousands. What's interesting about Katinka, that she dreamt of doing this as a little girl. And she was always in the lab. She never wanted to be anybody else but a chemist and a biologist. And she knew too much already, And then she said, oh yeah, I want to create something that defeats all the viruses. And that's what it is. Take the virus's own protein, open it up, find the center, flip it, put it back in, see if it makes more of itself, and it's done. They tried every male that submitted. Pfizer made thousands of tries. They all failed. And they didn't touch Katinka's because it was just too far-reaching. How can it be possible that a woman from not even Budapest, she was from east part of the country, where my father was from, kind of like where the Carpathian Mountains put their feet before they get really big, further down south. And she has come up with this idea to open up a protein, see where is the directions, and find a way to flip it and then put it back again and make a lot of it and then put it in arms. And it's just awesome to me that she would dream of it even as a young girl. Yes. And actually I think she already knew what to do. And then she gave her common sense to it, her female common sense, how to defeat anything. If you go against it, it will go back against you. And this is why we have eternal wars, because when America runs out of enemies, a lot of people don't make a lot of money. Because any kind of war that goes beyond a couple of weeks is not about anything else but corruption.
Yes.
That is definitely corruption. Then it invites it. I mean, here you have thousands of troops. First of all, troops, those are sons. They always name them to disassociate them, their heart, from the fact that they're gonna kill young males and females. They're gonna kill mothers' children. Yes. And they don't even know why they are there. And there's nothing to gain.
Yes, and they made it like natural, and it's not.
No, it's not.
When I remember some years ago when I went to the UK to become a priestess, and for me I was astonished with the work culture, the British work culture. That all the rituals they do around war, and it's really crazy, and it's like natural. You can see the widows and the orphans feeling proud, And it's not a...
They have to, otherwise they would commit suicide, because the pain behind it is the powerlessness.
Yeah.
Here I am a mother. They took my kid away. They give me nothing for it. They want the next kid now and the next kid. And then they would praise me for a brave and victorious. And that's just the narrative they have to put on murder.
Mhm.
They're just like women are renamed chicks and broads. I actually like broads, but then in England, birds, anything but woman, because then they have to feel something.
Mm.
They allow me to see what's happening just a second, okay?
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's the mailman. I'm gonna have something in there. Hey, where did you come from, little bug? I'm thirsty and I want to have it. Oh. Here, honey, have fun. That would be the best if it could be done like that. So what else do they want to know?
Okay, well, I wrote in Facebook asking people to do questions, and I feel awesome because most of them were men, and they are very interested in your training, in your Wiccan or spiritualist
Central
training.
European witchcraft. It's not Wicca. I mean, it's sort of Wicca-ish, but the Wicca is the British version of the Central European, Eastern European, even Nordic witchcraft. I'm not using the word witchcraft too much because they overused it already in Trump. Oh, it's a witch hunt. I just wanted to slap him around. You're not a witch. You're a shameful son. Not even your mother liked you, and that's hard to do. Even murderers have mothers. Oh, my boy is so good. He wouldn't do that. And then he does. There is only one way out of this patriarchal oppression that we're in, that caused the climate change, that caused this horrible poverty and illness and the plague. We can get out of it if women decided that we will never move against each other. If we said we're sisters. Sisterhood is the most powerful power around the world. But it has to be every country, every corner. And you know how they dismantled that? They dismantled it by giving us even bigger problems to worry about. Another war. And there's only one country that doesn't have a military, and that's Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is doing very well. Costa Rica says, we don't have to. We don't need any. We don't have any enemies. That's all it takes. We have no enemies. And if you have some beef or some kind of a reason, other than you want more corruption and more money in your pocket for nothing at all, I talked to the women of that country, and we would have these pods of leadership, and the leadership would be passed around, and we would truly, really create wise women again. And so instead of you being an enemy, I could go to your mother and say, hey, what's this thing about Sandra saying this and doing that? And she made a big explosion that we didn't know why. And instead of that explanation, and your mama would say, oh, I'm so sorry, she made a mistake, it blew up. No, she doesn't mean any harm. And oh, good. Then in that case, we have to have a festival for both of our people, and we're gonna eat and dance and make music and have shows. How's that? Your female leadership would say, yeah, we haven't been over to your place yet. Let's do that. And then we would say, okay, but half of it will go over your place because we don't have big enough for everyone. And then they have you ever looked what is left of European cohesiveness as people? I am watching the Latvian folk dances on YouTube. That's what to do, because ultimately we would have to give something important and responsible to the men. They have to be employed some other ways than soldiering. And there has to be enough honor earned, not just given or talked about. And if you, after we talked, why don't you go on YouTube and just type in Latvian folk dancing? They, every 4 years, the entire country is involved. Everybody is in their own little dancing group, and then they put it all together by choreographers. And it's just beautiful. Because otherwise, the men feel left out, and that makes them angry, and then we are the enemy. But culture is what solves these feelings. Culture is the answer to when we are clueless. Instead of inventing an enemy, we organize a big festival. I follow that.
It's great. It's a very good idea. I love that. So, well, and the one of the great the big matters in this time is the situation in Afghanistan with women. So, what can we do to help them, maybe through rituals or meditations, or what do you suggest about that?
Those women are the smartest of us. Many of them speak languages. There's a generation that went to actually schooling. Well, I know what they should do. They had a triple goddess themselves. The god Allah was used to be Alat, that was a lady god. If they look around on their land, they could dig up their old temples, like we did in Europe, and then reclaim it and burn a Quran, just one, for all of it.
The most terrible thing is, well, they are isolated because they can't go out their homes now, and they are uncertain of what it will happen with them. So it's amazing in this era that we have a lot of evolution, technology, and communication, but we are still fighting, reclaiming the women's rights. Women's are, and all the, a lot of people, they are not, they are not considered in the world.
I can't believe it. They're already beating women who show a little bit of leg. But you know what? These men will never invent anything or be at the top of any kind of science because they're too busy watching the women show a little ankle. And they take great pleasure showing their superiority because they are entitled to hit her. And we'll be watching this, we are a guest, but that's a full-time job to make 3 women suddenly into total enslavement. It's a full-time job. There's no schooling and they're involved. They don't get any better from it. And that generation of males who are soldiering with such fervor will not get anywhere. Then they'd be old men and they won't have they would have nothing. Less than the women who use their time when they are incarcerated to study and to teach each other. And all those women who I mean, Malala, that youngster, Malala was shot in the face for wanting to learn. And she endured it. She got help, put her face back together. And she's a very nice looking young lady. This time has a Nobel Peace Prize. And I think the invention of enemy is the key.
Yes.
We have to redefine who's enemy and who is not. And then imagine fighting the female way. Find out what makes them tick and flip it.
Yes. Yes, and what can we do to answer that, to change that terrible point of view? And what can I do? What can we do to change the things?
Okay, Sandra, I'm going to give you an assignment, okay?
Yeah, great.
I'm going to swallow my wonderful little fruit. Feel already better. We have to bring back the consciousness raising groups. That's where our power came when I was young. And then there were bigger problems and we no longer did that. But while we did it, we came up with women's studies, fighting for that and installed that. We came up with our health, our body, our health. We came up with communes to raise children together so the mummies are not burdened too much. And lesbians are fine people. And we're not afraid of them anymore. And what to do with the men, teach them having emotions, but only help those who are helping you, not give it away. We are not the medicine for male wounds. Males have to go through the same search as we have. They should have the consciousness raising groups too, but in our groups, we know already how to lead it and what to do. So even when you get 3 women together, that's already a coven. It's a minimum coven. Triple goddess present, it's potent. You say, okay, once a week, we see each other and we just check in, what have we done, what have we done, blah, 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 blah. And we take a topic, your mother, your father, so then we each talk to that, our younger years. And then after that, we light a candle in the middle and get my book or anybody else's book where you see a beautiful goddess poem, something about real lofty, like creation of the world. Merlin Stone. Is Merlin translated into Spanish? She was my teacher. I love that woman. Just really loved her. I miss her. She finally passed. She had a horrible disease, an inherited disease, which was even harder because there was nothing anybody could do about it. You know, your body dies little from feet up, and then it lasts a long time, finally reaches your heart, and then you can go. But anyhow, consciousness raising groups, which is I'm seeding that again, because there is a new generation that needs it. And the good thing about it is that it's immediately empowers, you know, and then you also see yourself in context of your generation and of your sex in your gender. You see yourself in context of your generation and your gender. And immediately you're not a weirdo, you're not alone, you are not being selected by the universe to be punished, you are not hated by the goddess because things are not going well for you. But you see that I belong into a context. And once a week, you reconnect with your context. And that is a healing process. And usually these consciousness raising groups go on sometimes 20 years. But I suggest do it 3 months, but then it's 100% commitment. And don't hold it down. If people want to join, you let them. Everything you do has to breathe in and out. It should never be fossiled. And continue doing that, and then builds up from below. And that's female fighting. We build from below up, and actually everybody profits by it. And when it comes up enough for a top, then we have other plans. But ultimately, my vision is that culture is stronger than arms. Culture is stronger than propaganda, than gossip, because the men now gossip a great deal, make up stories and pass them out as facts. But culture, good culture, folk culture, heals, involves, rewards, and makes happy. Because that's a natural. We actually have a place in our brains, everyone, for more spiritual thinking and more spiritual vibes. And when that part of the brain is not used, not needed, it does atrophy. Like anything you don't use atrophies. The laws of nature are constantly played out on us. But this, if you do this, then you can do many things. For example, periodically you can contact your goddess pods and say, we're gathering now, reach out, reach out, reach out. You got 3 months, get me as many people as you can, and then you can have people who help you put it on, people who donate money, because there's always money unless you do what I do. I just rent a camp. I don't have to buy it. I don't have to buy buildings. A lot of women say, oh, Z, we must have a building. No, the building then has me, and I don't want to be devoted to hold the building up. Just don't. I'm a writer. Get that through your heads. I'm a writer, and all this feeds me. All this is good for my head, but don't ask me to buy a building.
That is really great. Well, Susanna, I feel very, very grateful because you are here. You are very generous with your time, and well, I don't know if there is something you wish to say, something you wish to add.
Well, there are Dianics in Brazil. Those are really smart ladies. They teach as a professor. And that guy who puts on three different commercial gatherings where people buy, which is a good baseline. You always have to involve trade, because that's an ancient occupation of women. We always traded this for that, even before there was money. Like we used woven cotton as money. We would take a roll that we created, take to the market, and we say, well, I like to buy a chicken. And they would say it would be like, I don't know, 3 meters or whatever. You give them what they ask for and took your chicken. There was even a time when seashells were money.
Mm.
But there was never a time when there was no trade going on the seas, from north to south to north. It was never a time. Our people's job is to trade goods and elevate lifestyles, elevate the nourishment of the common folk, create the new generation that knows how to live on earth. That's really it.
Yeah. Great, Susanna. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, well, I think this is not the last time. So I want to invite you for other occasion more, because people in Argentina loves you a lot, because we read your books, and we have a teacher here that she admired you a lot, and she
What's her name?
Her name was Ethel Morgan, and she was her father was a tango poet. And she she grew up in a very male environment, and she was all the time with the conscious of the goddess. And when she met your books, well, she felt connected. I think she was in the 80s. I think she started to learn about goddess, and any book came here in those times. So she was I don't know how she knew about a little bookshop in England. I don't remember the name, that she's not. And also in Gothic Image, that Gothic Image is a bookshop, and they were publishers too. And she was writing letters to them, and she was buying books through them. So she was one of your first fans here. And then
tell her, if you see her, that thank you. And the world thanks you, because we are building a global revolution. Yeah. This is different. We are not one-on-one. I mean, this is not that kind of a fight. We're building it from below, and with happiness. People who participate get happier and mentally stronger, and they can resist the constant barrage of negativity that comes at women, of your hair is wrong, your smile. I mean, how dare any prick would say that to you? Now we don't have to. I mean, the mask took that away.
Yeah. So, well, we knew you and Marilyn Stone and other mothers of the goddess movement through her book, and it's an amazing mission of life.
Yes.
To brought back the goddess into the world.
Yes, and we are not alone. There are a lot of us. All of us not necessarily writing books, but there are a ton of books. I looked at my name, and Z in Greek means the key. And I thought that, oh my God, even that is a message. And the key, I opened this door and outpours millions of books about the goddess, and all the women who've been writing but couldn't publish suddenly had see the audience. And I'm very proud of being a key. I really am. Yeah. That is something in my second destiny that I have achieved. And now what I'm doing is I'm actually a writer, and I have written many things that didn't go anywhere because the culture was not receptive. But I found them now, and now the culture is receptive. So I have a character called Baba Boogie, and Baba Boogie and the Berkeley Broads will be kind of like a historical satire about patriarchy and the women who were peaceniks become witches and how they fight back, and it's an animation.
Yeah.
If you know any good animations, tell them to email me, because I'm very much at the beginning putting this together. And it does take not just a village, it takes a studio.
Yes.
Animation is the most free of all art that we know of. And I can do many things and write many words for characters that are not human.
Yes.
And get away with it.
It's amazing.
And those who listen to it would be recognizing it.
Yeah. So what?
I've devoted myself in my last destiny. I'm on my third destiny. And I feel very excited that there's still some part of me that hasn't come out completely. I moved several times since the 80s. I wrote a lot during the 80s. I was just 40 years old. That was peak time. I found in a box saucers and salad bowls. There were 3 scripts for movies, 2 scripts for TV serials. There was one novel called The Silky and the Witch. It was a love story. And then movies like To Die and Go to Woodstock, and Pretty Lady Bronca, which was based on a folk story that is all around Europe. And then there is one more, but I couldn't find that one about the leaders. I really needed that, and that has not come up yet, but I have enough to sell. So what I do with my assistant nowadays is we create inquiry letters, and we are learning how this is done to get in. And I think once we get recognized, it's, if you think I write good books,
very good.
I'm even better with dialogue and setting up scenes, and not really, I don't do jokes, I don't write jokes, but I'm a humorist. So I look at real life and I notice things that are weird or funny, and then I point them out. It's more like, have you ever watched Seinfeld?
Yes.
Well, he's a humorist.
Yes.
But he also had a jokey part with the stand-up. But he was mostly a humorist. And I admired that. I thought, yeah, I can do that. That's good.
It's gorgeous. Yeah. Yes. And you wrote songs. And yes. the most, well-known song that we are come from the goddess.
It sums up our theology. That's complete philosophy in 4 lines. 4 lines, and it captivates people. And Christians sing it, and Jewish people sing it at whatever time, sometimes at funerals, sometimes at weddings, sometimes just to make the kids fall asleep. And then they got a little bit heavy on it, and they started rewriting it and putting in, we all come from God, which doesn't sing well. And I caught that, and I went after them. I said, don't you dare to rewrite me. I don't give you permission to rewrite. That's a brilliant 4-liner. And if you cannot make your belief in a other kind of song, don't take mine. I'm not a folk song. I allow everybody to sing it and use it. Many recorded it, but that is one perfect hymn. It's just really it. And we all come from the goddess, like the drop of rain. It really came to me. I was a very small asbat in Santa Monica on the beach, and it was kind of like wet enough air, but it didn't rain. And then we stood there, and there was no culture yet. We didn't know nothing yet. And I thought, okay, Z, you used to make up the songs, so what about just say what you see? So we all come from the goddess. That was our reason to be there. And to her we shall return. That is absolutely a truth. And like a drop of rain, and that was getting right there in front of me, flew into the ocean, right at my toes. The ocean was like not further than this desk. and I gave it song, gave it the music, and then it went around the world. I thought that was one of the best proselytizing songs I have ever written.
It's amazing. And it's very powerful also to call the rain.
Yes.
Because
yes.
you sing and
It is. Starhawk said that they don't want to sing it when they don't want rain, because each time they do, the rain comes. Which I'm very happy about, because we need in California lots of rain.
Yes.
It's good to
so
know.
we are
that
going to sing it.
Yes.
So, well, Susanna, thank you for your time. And well, I hope to see you again and to share another talk. I think it could be a classical. They can become classical talks. So we can.
I like it. Please feel free. Now, I'm not gonna do much when you go away. I leave it up. Am I in danger of? I mean, my useful assistant set it up, so I really actually did have to only click one time. But she comes once a week, so I just double check.
Great.
Okay, love. Blessed be.
Okay, thank you.
Blessed be. Bye. Now, what do I push out to make you go away? The F?
Yes, I can finish and great.
How do I finish?
I